As we continue along with our in-depth discussion of layers, the next thing I want to talk about is smart objects. Now, smart objects are a special type of layer that's kind of like having an entire Photoshop document referenced within a single layer of your document. Now, let's take a look at what I've got here. I have a ninja on its own layer. Now, this is the same ninja that we took a look at in a previous video. He's just been flattened down to a single layer as opposed to a whole bunch of groups, and maybe his colors are a little different. What I'm going to do is duplicate this ninja. There's all kinds of ways to go about doing this. We could drag the layer down here onto the new layer button, and that would duplicate him. We could just Alt-drag the layer into a new slot in the layer stack, and that would also duplicate it. With the Move tool active, which you can activate by clicking on its icon at the very top of the Tools panel or by tapping the V key, we could hold down the Alt key and just drag out a new copy. That will also do it. We can go to Layer, and we can choose New. We can just choose Duplicate Layer, Boom, and give that its own name. And there's another way to duplicate it. So there's all kinds of ways to go about duplicating a layer. I just thought I'd go ahead and mention that. Now, with this guy duplicated, I will go ahead and rename the layer. So we'll double-click on its name specifically, and we'll call this Regular Ninja. Not Ninja, but Ninja. And then this one we're going to rename, and we'll call this the Smart Ninja. Now let's set them side by side. So here's our regular ninja, and here's our smart ninja. It's hard to tell one from the other at the moment, but what I'm going to do is take my smart ninja and right-click on it, and we have the ability to convert this to a smart object. Alternatively, we can go under Layer, go down to Smart Objects, and choose Convert to Smart Object as well. Now notice there is a difference between the two icons. The Smart Ninja, who's now up here, he has a little tiny Smart Object icon, kind of like a sub-icon in the lower right-hand corner of his thumbnail. What does this mean? This means that this layer is no longer just a layer. It's kind of been converted into its own Photoshop document, which is now being referenced inside of this document. Why is that cool? Well, it's cool because we can make all kinds of changes to this Smart Ninja, and the original file can remain untouched. Here's what I mean when I say that. Watch this. I don't really want to branch off into having to teach about file transformations, but just as a demonstration, follow along with me and check this out. I'm going to grab my regular Ninja, hold down Shift, and grab my Smart Ninja as well. Now with both of these layers selected, I'm going to hit Control-T. Now Control-T allows us to transform a current selection of layers, and I'm going to put my mouse over the upper left corner handle of this little square, and I'll just drag it down here to the corner like so. In fact, while I'm dragging, if I hold down the Shift key, I'll get a nice uniform scaling. When I'm done, I can go ahead and press Enter. Now I've scaled both of these guys down. They're both very tiny, and maybe I change my mind at some point. I'm like, you know what, I really need those guys to be big again. So let's hit Control-T one more time. And I'm going to shift drag that left corner right back out to pretty close to where it was. Doesn't have to be exact. And press Enter. Now take a look at what happened. My Smart Ninja is still nice and clear. He's still all sharp. But take a look at what has happened to my regular Ninja. Ooh, it looks pretty terrible. Now let's do it again. Let's hit Control-T. And this time we'll scale it way down to just a couple of pixels. Hit Control-T one more time. And we'll drag that all the way back up and press Enter. Now it should become really apparent what's starting to happen. The Smart Ninja is maintaining his original shape, while the original Ninja, the regular Ninja, is constantly being degraded each time we do this. Now, I'm going to step back through history and undo all that. So I'm going to hit Control-Alt-Z several times and get us back to here. Now I'm going to hide my Smart Ninja for just a moment and focus on the regular Ninja. I just want it to be 100% clear what just happened and why this Ninja started looking more and more terrible as we went. It's because when we scaled him down by hitting Control-T once again, and then if I scale him down to just a few pixels, so now he's very, very tiny. And if we zoom in on him, in fact, let's set him up to full zoom. So I'll hit Control-1. So here he is at 100%, okay? I'll grab my zoom tool by tapping the Z key, and if we click and drag, check him out. He's really a very small collection of pixels. There's really not much there. So let's hit Control-0 to make the whole thing visible in the screen. Now, if I hit Control-T again to scale that back up, What Photoshop is having to do is take that really low number of pixels and make them bigger. And it does a fairly good job of remembering what that image looked like for the most part. It does store some of that data. That's just Photoshop CS5 being generally awesome. However, it certainly looks nowhere near as good as the original, the Smart Ninja does. Now let's talk a little bit specifically about the Smart Ninja. This is just the Ninja layer that has been converted to a smart object. Why are we able to scale it down to nothing? And I can do the same thing, hit Control-T one more time and scale it all the way back up, and it's just fine. That's because this is not a collection of pixels on a layer anymore. This is actually an entirely separate Photoshop document which we're simply referencing in. Here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Let's say I wanted to paint something on top of this ninja. Like maybe I want to put a smiley face on his chest. So if I grab my brush tool, as soon as I start trying to paint, you'll notice we've already got a little circle with a slash on it. And if I click, Photoshop warns us. It says the smart object must be rasterized before proceeding. And we haven't talked about rasterization yet, but we will. Edit contents will no longer be available. Rasterize the smart object. No, we don't want to do that. So let's hit cancel. Could not use the brush tool because the smart object is not directly editable. That's because, again, this is its own document. However, if we double click on its thumbnail, look what happens. After editing the contents, choose File, Save to commit the changes. Those changes will be reflected upon returning to ninja.psd. The file must be saved to the same location. If the Save As dialog appears, choose Cancel and flatten the image before saving. You must flatten the image. It's vital that you remember to do that. So now here we are inside our smart object. Notice it's not a PSD file, it's a PSB file. It's a special file format specifically for this purpose. And if I draw a little smiley face on his chest, like so, I can hit Control S, jump back over here to my original document, and it's automatically updated to include that. Now why is that cool? Let's jump back over here to our PSB file. I'll hit Control-Alt-Z a couple of times, and then hit Control-S and save. And now the smiley face is gone. That's cool because we can do all kinds of things to a smart object and have any changes to it just come right along for the ride. So for example, if I take my Smart Ninja and we hit Control-T one more time and I make him really squat and really wide. I don't know why I'd ever want to do this, but you can. Now we can jump back over to the Smart Ninja PSB file, and let's say I just write my name right on his chest. So I'll get my brush out, and I'll make the brush fairly small, and let's just say I write my name right across his chest. Hit Control S, and watch the asterisk up here at the top. It disappears. Now if we jump back over, the name is not only written across the chest, but it's also scaled to match what's going on with our existing file. Now that's what happens when you convert an existing layer into a smart object. A smart object doesn't necessarily have to be just a single layer. You can reference an entirely separate PSD file. So just as an example, I'm going to jump all the way back over here. I'm going to hit Control-T one more time, and this time instead of just dragging handles, up here in my options box we have width and height. So I'm going to take W, which is width, and we'll set that to 100, hit Tab over to height, and set this over to, not 1,000, but 100 as well. So now he's back to his original size. I'll jump back over to my PSB file. We'll hit Control-Alt-Z a few times to get rid of my name, hit Control-S one more time to save, and then I'll close out Smart Ninja. So now here we are back with just a regular smart object. Now I'm going to do something a little bit fancy. We're going to go to File, Place, and I have the Ninja layer example that we used in a previous video. I'm going to bring this in and just press Enter. Now take a look at this guy. He is an entire drawing. He's even got a white background. He is a smart object. If I try to paint on it with the brush, I get the same warning I got before. I do not want to rasterize it, so I can't paint on it. I can, however, double click on this document, click OK when our little warning pops up, and check it out. All of the initial layers that make up this drawing are still present. So I can take the background and turn it off, hit Control S, jump back over to Ninja PSD, and there you go. The background is now gone. Very, very handy, especially if you need to start merging and bringing a lot of different projects together. If you spent a lot of time doing a multi-layered composition on one document and you need to bring that into another document, a smart layer may be the way to go because it allows you to bring that in as a single object. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in terms of working with smart objects. The last thing I do want to mention is when you're done with something being a smart object, and maybe you need to condense this down because honestly, smart objects do come with a bit more overhead. It's really the entire overhead of the other document kind of piled on top of this one as well. You may need to convert this to just a regular layer. To do that, you can just right-click and choose Rasterize Layer. Now you might not be familiar with the term rasterize. What that means is to take whatever is going on with this layer and convert it to raw pixels. Because right now, it's not pixel data. It's reference data coming from this file. That's why we're able to take it and squash it down to something really, really crazy. And press enter. And then we can hit Control-T again and scale it back up, and it's still okay, because we're never actually squashing it down to just a few pixels. We're just taking the size of that referenced area and we're making it smaller, but it's still referencing all those original pixels. So if we right-click and choose Rasterize Layer, this is now no longer a smart object. It's just a collection of pixels. So that now if I scale it back down to just a few pixels like I did a moment ago, something really, really tiny. In fact, let's do that a couple of times just to be really gross. Let's hit Control-T, and we'll scale this down again. So check him out. He's really like what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. He's like 9 pixels. That's all he is. So now we'll come out here. We'll hit Control-T one more time, and I'll scale this up and press enter, and that's all that's left of that poor little ninja. He's been destroyed because he's no longer a smart object. What we just told Photoshop to do was to take a collection of 9 pixels and make them bigger, so now we just have junk. So we'll go ahead and throw that away. Alright, hopefully that makes smart objects make a lot more sense to you in Photoshop. That is going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.